Hey, everybody, welcome back into another episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast with your host, Dominick Lorenz, co-host David Goodkind, and we have a special guest on this episode, all things Angels offseason action. As we record this podcast, about an hour ago, the Angels pull off a trade for outfielder Hunter Renfroe from the Milwaukee Brewers. And that guest I was mentioning about, Toddfox from Halos in the Infield. Todd, how we doing tonight? Angel news, big night.
Doing really good. Very surprising Angel news. So I'm happy to talk about it with you guys.
Of course, it's been a very active offseason for the Angels, not only getting Tyler Anderson, a lefty starting pitcher. They pull off a trade to get infielder Gio Urshela. Now they get Hunter Renfroe. David, what the heck is going on? The last time we talked about the Angels, we thought this may be a slow offseason for Perry Minasian.
Yeah, he's made some really creative moves. That's the first thing that stands out to me. It's nothing that's like too flashy, but creative and solid is like the impression that I'm getting with these acquisitions so far.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dive on in, but before we do, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe here on this podcast. Our podcast, of course, exclusively on YouTube. And of course, you can get more information for Katella Chronicles on our website, katellachronicles.wordpress.com, or on our social media channels, Instagram and Twitter at Katella_CHRON. But let's dive on in, folks. Hunter Renfroe is now the newest Angel in the outfield. Todd, you're the guest. I'm going to start with you. We were just talking about this right before we clicked the live button here. Why do you love this move for the Angels?
High reward, low risk. It's usually the other way around. You have two pitchers that Jason Junk both came and Elvis came from the Yankees. They were kind of cast-offs for our cast-off, Andrew Heaney. And it didn't work out, that trade for either team. Elvis came in here and he left the building more than he stayed in the building, all over the place. Jason Junk, he provided you a couple good spot starts here and there, but then he threw, like his name, junk, and got hit out of the ballpark. So losing those two guys, I'm not going to shed a tear over. It's not like they were homegrown or nothing like that. But getting a guy like Renfroe, yes, he's got 1-year deal, but it's a prove-it contract. He came off with a very nice season with the Milwaukee Brewers, and 29 home runs, about 78 RBIs or so, 260 average or almost. I feel good about that compared to what we had in the lineup last year, all of last year. And so this isn't one of those bargain basement Walmart type of movie deals, $5 DVDs, bin type, stretch reach, kind of like what Epler was used to. Now that we have Minasian in there, I feel this is like phase 2. Phase 1 last year was establishing the pitching staff and the bullpen, shoring up the pitching. I think this year is going to be all about shoring up the bench and shoring up the weak spots in that lineup. And I think putting Renfroe out there with Taylor Ward and Mike Trout, I like the outfield.
And I was already looking at a lot of people were commenting, of course, on Twitter, Instagram. And then, of course, there's some news that comes out. Hunter Renfroe, 30 years old. He's going to be on the last year of his contract. So it's essentially a 1-year deal. So what, like you said, we didn't give away any homegrown players for a 1-year guy. And who knows, he could have a terrific season and it could turn into a contract extension. But his last 2 seasons, 2021 with Boston, 2022 with Milwaukee, very similar numbers. He basically revived his career after a crummy start with San Diego, a horrible year, even though it got him to the World Series and the Mike Trout lookalike picture that we all talk about from the 2020 World Series against the Dodgers. But he has a .492 slugging percentage, which ranked 10th in the NL last year with the Milwaukee Brewers. Great numbers. And one that I love, we talked about this. He's going to join Ward. He's going to join Trout. His defense. The Angels needed somebody defensively sound in left field, and I brought some numbers to the page. Hunter Renfroe has a 2.7 WAR. Okay, we'll take it. It's above 0.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 main guys that played left field last year for the Angels, minusing Brandon Marsh now that he's in Philly. Joe Adell had a WAR of negative 0.5. Mickey Moniak, -1. Magneuris Sierra, minus 0.5. Get rid of the platoon. You have Renfroe now. I think this is a solid buy defensively. He has one of the strongest arms in baseball as an outfielder. Yeah, he might not be the fleetest of foot, but he's still a quality arm out there in left field. David, I know you and I, in our last podcast, we talked about some potential Angels free agent outfielders. I liked Andrew Benintendi. I know Mitch Haniger's name has been floating around the Angels recently. And we talked about Renfroe, and Haniger, very similar. What do you think of this deal? And can Renfroe be more fruitful than Haniger could have been on a free agent deal?
Yeah, so I like the deal because it doesn't hamstring the franchise, regardless of what happens this upcoming season. If he's not any good, you let him walk. If he is good, you could try to re-sign him. But either way, it beats signing like another Josh Hamilton, and you're stuck for 6 years, 7 years on a bad contract. So there's no bad money in this. I like what Perry's been talking about depth a lot this offseason. This is definitely a depth move. You and I in our last podcast, we talked about how the Angels consistently go get quadruple A guys and have them platoon. Renfroe kind of negates that now. You have 3 everyday outfielders as opposed to 2 everyday outfielders and then kind of winging it for, let's say, like left field. Coming into this trade, I kind of felt like they were going to platoon Adele and Walsh to a certain degree because I'm sure we will get into it later because of another acquisition they made last week. But it creates more depth. It raises the floor for this team. It's like Todd said, it's a low risk, high reward kind of move. So it's a safe, creative trade. It's kind of hard to have any negative thoughts about it since they didn't give up too much to get him.
Absolutely not. It's a fantastic move, and it's good to see, I think, in general, for us Angel fans. We've been put through the ringer and back, I would say, for the last decade of this organization, and 2021 did not go in our way, and I think all 3 of us have talked about it on Katella Chronicles and on Halos in the Infield. We thought last offseason was supposed to be the big offseason. We thought we got it with a lot of pitching, and the Angels pitching staff did a very good job, and that's why essentially pitching coach Matt Wise got to keep his job for another year. It was always the offense. I know Todd loves this, but we were shipping out the Squiddy Poos of the world, the Andrew Velasquez, the Tyler Wades, the, no offense, Magneuris Sierras, and sometimes Joe Adell. That was not a recipe for a postseason team. And the biggest factor for the Angels, trying to retain Shohei Ohtani after this year. I think the eye is on the prize for Ohtani. He's going to be a coveted free agent if we get to that point next year. But even with the impending sale of Arte Moreno, he and Perry Minasian are right now looking, they are in an all-in mentality and doing their best to improve this team moving forward. It's very interesting. Todd, I'll bring you in on this factor that I was thinking about. We've had questions for so long. What are the Angels going to do this offseason with this impending sale of the team? Through the first 2.5, 3 weeks of free agency / trades, it looks like the Angels are all in, and they want to, this is going to be the make it or break it year. How do you like how Minasian has gone about it on the aggressive side of things? Because right now the Angels have made the most moves this offseason amongst any team in Major League Baseball.
I was a little worried about how they were maybe rush guys up that they drafted. The shortstop's names I'm forgetting right now, the one they got last year.
Neto.
Neto blew through the system. I thought, man, they would put too much pressure on these young guys like they did Adele, because I still feel like Adele in a way was done wrong, done dirty in a way. He hasn't helped himself, obviously, too, so it's gone both ways. I can't sit there and say it's the organization all the way. But I'm feeling very good about the fact that, bringing in their Gio Urshelas, they brought in Hunter Renfroe, proven guys who have stats, who can get on base. And for the first time, I think they're taking a Tampa Bay approach. Yes, like you brought up Benintendi, I thought he would be a perfect fit like you did. And players like that, you don't have to break the bank for. However, you might not even have to touch the bank, or crack the bank, with making plays like with getting Urshela and Renfroe and more trades like that to further bolster the team. Because if you look at Tampa, Oakland, when they want to win, they're always trying to fill the teams with guys that maybe are cast off from other teams or maybe not really paid attention to too much, but they have a high on base percentage, have good WAR, solid defense. And I think these are players that Perry's going after. And, if he could fill a roster with these type of players and fill the bench, I mean, it's going to up the play of everybody and maybe prove it to Shohei and the new ownership group that, hey, this is a team that wants to win, that's going to win. Not just wants to win, but it's going to win. And if they could prove it to the new owners, obviously they'll spend the cash, and obviously Ohtani will take the deal, because I do feel in my heart of hearts he's comfortable here. He would like to win here, but, you got to convince him that that's going to be the thing, that we're going to win.
Absolutely. And, the Angels have a lot of utility guys that can play multiple positions on this team.
Yep.
And they added another one in Gio Urshela, which I think is a fantastic trade. And let's be real, the Angels really didn't give up that much either. It was one singular minor league pitcher. So the Angels in these two trades, 4 pitchers, 2 minor leaguers, 2 major league pitchers, if you want to consider Junk and Peguero major league pitchers. David, you like the Gio Urshela trade. I think the one thing about the Urshela trade that we all have discussed is, what does this mean for the Angels? Was he going to be a shortstop? Is he going to be at second? Is he replacing Jared Walsh? And could they dangle Fletcher, Walsh, or Rengifo for a trade piece? So far, the Angels have done 2 trades. Rengifo and Walsh have not been a part of any of them. So with Gio Urshela coming to town, what does his implications have on this Angels roster for some players like Rengifo, Fletcher, and even Walsh?
It's really tough to tell today. So we're going to get more of a feeling for what they're going to do after we see what happens with the shortstop position, especially. If they don't do anything, then my inclination is that Urshela is going to get a lot of looks at short. He's an everyday guy. He's one of those guys you don't really platoon either. So that's the interesting part of all of this, right? Is they're acquiring actual major league depth, but these guys have to play. So it kind of bumps someone off. So who's the odd man out between Fletcher and Rengifo, Walsh? Those are the 3 names, right? So I think we're hearing a lot of interest in Rengifo slip through the cracks, I guess. That's probably the name to circle right now, and likely the likeliness of being moved, the most likely to be moved would be my guess is Rengifo. So it's hard to tell right now. If they go out and sign Jane Segura, I think it's someone like Jane Segura, or even like a Carlos Correa or one of the top tier guys, you can pretty much write off Rengifo. He's gonna be moved. But for right now, it's tough. They're talking about sort of using him as like an ultra utility, right? Even playing some outfield. I don't really know if that's going to be the case. I figure for even him, they'll want a primary position. And for us, I think we all agree that first base probably makes the most sense, especially if David Fletcher's healthy at second. So it's kind of a wait and see thing with Urshela. It's you don't really have the answer right now. You can just be happy that actual major league depth has been accrued, and then just kind of see how the chips fall, right?
Absolutely. We've preached this many of times, and I know David has been, I think, the ultimate preacher in depth with this Angels organization. Todd,
I had said
as well.
Yeah, I had said last offseason that the offense would go through slumps just because they hadn't acquired the necessary depth for the lineup, and we saw that. So, obviously this is a step in a different right direction.
Yeah, and consistency is going to be one of those things that you hope the Angels can have as well out of these players that they've received in Renfroe and Urshela. Todd?
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to tee you up and say, with Urshela now, and you can add your thoughts in as this, where do you think Urshela will play on opening day? And with these 2 moves now, do you think the Angels still have money in the bank to go grab a top 4 shortstop in Bogarts, Correa, Trey Turner, or Dansby Swanson?
I don't think they touched the high-end free agency for the first time. I don't think we're rumored in too many of those other than Swanson, because people think that Swanson's like the perfect fit for us. But I would go as far as to say, like, for me, like, I love Walsh. So let me put that out there right away. But, when someone preferences something, they're like, yeah, but
you got a big butt coming to your story now, folks.
Oh, I sure do. I'm going to provide that butt. I think Walsh would be great trade bait. Obviously there's a risk that he can take back off again with a shift not being there, because that was his problem too, was if he's not striking out, he's hitting into that shift every goddamn time. But, and his defense is really difficult to replace. But, however, like David may be saying, putting Renfroe at first, I would actually love the fact if you can have an infield of Rendon at third, Urshela at short, Fletch at second, Renfroe at first, and play it like that, then have one of these other infielders off, or maybe even if you sign Segura, like he was saying, because Segura is going to be like a guy that I think the Angels could afford. It's just whether they want to keep him. I think you'd have to lose for sure Renfroe and Fletch, so maybe you package Renfroe and Walsh, and then stick with Fletcher, Urshela, Rendon, and Renfroe, and what's his name? But I think there's a way of doing it. That's kind of how I would do it. Like Walsh would have to move if we're going to upgrade with Segura or any of these other players, because David's right. Urshela didn't come in to play off the bench. Fletcher's not going to be an off the bench guy. I just would be really sad though. Last thing saying, talking about this subject is if Renfroe were to just tear it up, because I just loved his play last year. I mean, he was a firecracker for this lineup, and I could easily seen him start opening day. Is what I'm saying. I didn't really get to the answer because I don't know. I mean, there still could be moves, but I would love to see Renfroe on this team starting opening day. I could see him hitting leadoff, but I don't know, man. These moves are, they could be setting up something bigger.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking for all of us in this case, and either one of you can disagree if you don't think I'm right. I don't think the Angels are done. It's not like, okay, we're done. We got our 3 guys, the pitching staff's intact. I agree with you, Todd. Something bigger's happening. I'm not saying they're going to go bust out and give 10-year deal to trade Turner as that big move, but there could be at least another 2 or 3 moves. The Angels' offense right now looks better than it was a month, 2 ago, maybe in the middle of the season when they were slumping.
Miles ahead of it.
Miles ahead, more balanced. The only thing right now with this roster that I think is one demerit to the Angels' offense right now, it's very right-handed friendly. The only lefties in the lineup, if opening day was today, would be Shohei Ohtani, Luis Renfroe, and Jared Walsh. If you lose Renfroe or Walsh, now you're down to 2, and you got to protect Ohtani in situation A. In situation B, you got to lengthen that order at the same time. They've lengthened the order with names. Now you just got to do a little protecting, and again, that's going to be on the shoulders of manager Phil Nevin and, of course, his 2 new hitting coaches, which is a point that David and I have talked about before when our last podcast dropped. The Angels had just hired 2 new hitting coaches. So with all of that information touched down and combined, you're seeing a new, I don't want to say a new form of Angels front office thinking, but this is the first time I think the Angels have been smartly aggressive instead of doling out the 7-year deals to the Anthony Rendones, the 10-year deals to Albert Pujols. We're actually seeing trades that are benefiting the Angels instead of other teams fleecing us for players. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, no, even to go deeper into that, I think you're seeing from the front office the first time them realizing you need to be 9 deep and not carried by 3 stars. Because they're not putting stars at every position, but they're putting major league players at every position, and trying to minimize those holes in the lineup. Like you look through 5 through 9 last season, it's like pitching to pitchers, right? These guys aren't going to do anything. So by getting these proven MLB players who aren't going to command a crazy salary, and they're not going to be star players, and they're not going to carry the team on their back, but they're going to give you consistent at bats, that you kind of know what you're getting out of these guys. You raise the floor and you protect yourself from those major slumps that the Angels went through last season.
Yeah, and touching that point real quick, David brought up a good thing, because 5 to 9 was terrible. And even if they had some production or within the 1 to 5 and they had to make a substitution or had to pull some guy out or give a guy a day off, that's just another weak spot in that lineup. If you fill the roster with guys like how Tampa Bay did, like he was talking about, high on base percentage guys, you know what you're getting from them, you're not going to lose too much when you have to make a move, when you have to make a defensive substitution. You're not going to take out Trout for Magnus Sierra and then hope that Sierra can come through with a big hit. It's just not going to happen. So, that's the thing that's going to make this team win, because their bullpen held out on a lot of games last last year, giving this team plenty of opportunities, including the starting staff, to win ball games, and they just couldn't cross a hit, start a rally, or even earn a walk. So that's what I'm looking forward to with the new hitting coaches, to preach more walks, better at bats, and productive at bats.
Yeah, for years we've been talking about the Angels, and it's been a conversation with everybody. We need pitching. We need pitching. We need pitching. Guess what? We have pitching. Even though we just doled some out to get Hunter Renfroe and Gio Urshela, we still have a laundry list of pitchers at AAA and below that are going to be just fine. And the Angels rotation right now, which is a perfect segue to the next free agent, the first free agent signing for the Angels. The Angels rotation added left-handed starter Tyler Anderson. He was with the Dodgers last season, had a phenomenal season, went 15-5, had an ERA of 2.57, a lot of strikeouts, healthy, a lot of innings pitched. So now the Angels rotation looks something like this: Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Anderson, Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers, and Jose Suarez. And the sixth spot on the rotation is currently up for grabs. The Angels are left-handed, heavy on the pitching front, which is okay. I'm not a huge believer in, you got to have 3 lefties, 2 righties, or balancing it out. I just want pitchers that can pitch. And I think you don't have to go out and go get the Jacob deGroms of the world or the Carlos Rodons. The Angels have, like we mentioned, a laundry list of players at AAA and below that are a year or 2, maybe 3 away from being bona fide starters. We were patient with Reed Detmers, and we were very fruitful this year. We've been patient with Patrick Sandoval. We are now seeing the fruits of those labors, which has been very fantastic to see. So the Angels, add a pitcher, have 1 starting spot available. Could it be Michael Lorenz re-signing on a cheap deal? Could it be somebody else that we aren't even paying attention to yet? That'll be a question in a moment. But let's get in on Tyler Anderson for a minute. He was, as mentioned, with the Dodgers last year. Very good year. Was it luck on his side that he had a good year? Is it a flash in the pan type situation? Or for 3 years and $39 million, this is something that can pay off for the Angels in a big way? Todd, what do you think on that one with Tyler Anderson?
I think it's a good move. His numbers weren't bad with his previous 2 clubs. Obviously, you're going to get a lot more run support with the Dodgers, and you're pitching in a pitcher's ballpark. You got an easy division, so I think they'll skew his numbers a little bit. There's no way in my mind he's going to come out with a 2.50 ERA with us. I'd be grateful and happy, but if he pitches under a 3.75 ERA for me, it's a win. Anywhere around there, that's a huge win. And I think he could do it. He pitched decent, and I think it was Colorado and Frisco, about 4 ERA. But I think he can be about a 3.50 ERA with us, and I'll take that in a heartbeat. And I'll take those 13 to 15 wins in a heartbeat. I just wouldn't put him in the number 2 spot. I would stick with Sandoval going 2. I think he's ready to take another jump in this rotation. I think with some run support, you'll see his numbers go up. He pitched phenomenal last year, just did not get the run support that he deserved. So I would like a Ohtani, Sandoval, Anderson, and I think Anderson at a 3 would be phenomenal for the Angels.
I think so. The price is good. The Angels, again, they didn't ball out and go spend like the Max Scherzer deal last year and have to dump all this money into a pitcher. That Anderson he is over the 30 mark. So I guess in sports years, that's an old man for a lot of, areas per se. But I think it's a good deal for a pitcher who's been mediocre. Again, tough ballpark in Colorado, went to Seattle, and then came to the Dodgers and had a very good year. I know the Dodgers, as you mentioned, a ballpark that is very pitcher friendly. Angels, not so much, but I think he can still pull it out. You saw what Matt Wise did with the pitching staff this year and improved throughout the season. So you can say, hey, if Anderson does have a couple bumps in the road this season, I'm not freaking out saying, okay, if he has 2 bumps in the road, the 3-year deal is lost. David, 3 years, $39 million. Is it a lot? Is it a little? Is it fair? And does Tyler Anderson show a signal that the Angels are confident not taking on project pitchers anymore?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, I think it's a fair deal for both sides. It's more security financially than he would have got by taking the qualifying offer. Protects him for a couple more years, and ultimately gets some more money, especially if he does regress, and he should regress. The Dodgers typically get the best out of the pitchers, regardless of who they are. I mean, Andrew Heaney was pitching well for them. He wasn't pitching well for anyone else, but it's the Dodgers. So, there's going to be a little bit of that. So expect regression. I don't expect like a crazy regression though. He'll be really solid. I think that in that 3 spot is really nice. If he maintains what he was able to do last season, then stick him at 2. That's awesome. But yeah, we'll see some regression out of him. But I think the number is fair for him. I think it's fair for the Angels. It's not too much AAV. It's about what, 13 mil.
Yeah, he gets 13 mil each year. It's very straightforward, very easy.
It's not going to kill him, especially with the new ownership coming in. We're assuming they're going to have deep pockets, so that shouldn't hurt. It provides a little bit of more stability for the rotation. So yeah, it's not the flashiest move, even though we're saying that's about a guy who's coming off an all-star year with a great ERA and just an awesome season. But I think everyone kind of expects him to regress a little bit. And that's where the step back is, but still the money in the years kind of make it a lot easier to swallow. And he has shown to be a reliable arm the last 2 seasons. So I think it's a smart signing by the Angels. It's not really risky, and I think he should ultimately be a good fit here. And you're gonna have to remind me the second part of your question is giving up on project pitchers, right? The Angels.
Yeah, exactly. Are we done with those? Are those in the past?
I think so, mostly because signing guys like Anderson who aren't gonna like, blow the doors off the barn or whatever, and be really flashy. They're sort of ushering in this new era of pitching, right? After drafting all pitchers a couple years ago, you're kind of waiting for these young guys to grow up and fill in this rotation moving forward. Hopefully it's with Ohtani, but if it's without him, you still have guys that you can count on in the future to call up. So I think he's one of those pitchers that kind of fits into that game plan where you can count on him for wins while you're waiting for these guys to mature and become major league ready. So I think by that standard, in the time frame we're at right now, there's no reason for the Angels to take chances on the Jose Quintanas. I know he's now all of a sudden a coveted free agent. If he ever came back to the Angels, we all know he'd fall apart again. But I think you stick with the homegrown guys right now, and you sign guys like Tyler Edison who are good B tier pitchers, and you ride with that. They're not going to cost an arm and a leg, and they're going to give you a solid number of innings. So I think that's kind of the mindset the Angels are in right now, and hopefully maintain as they continue to wait for the Detmers and Sandoval's to really get going.
Absolutely. I think it's a great move for the Angels. I think for the first 3 moves of the offseason, if I had to give these moves a grade for Perry Minasian, I would give it an A-. I think they're not flashy. They're not trashy. They're just solid picks that end up helping this organization get on a better depth and consistent basis. The numbers don't lie sometimes. And again, we say this without them playing a game in an Angels uniform. This is all hearsay. We got a couple months until spring training, until opening day next year. So there's a lot of time that goes in between. But I think on paper right now, the Angels are much better than where they were from day one last season, regardless of the first month and a half being very well, thinking the Angels were World Series contenders of 2022. But the Angels are in a much better place right now. I'm giving this, like I said, A- for the first 3 moves of the offseason. Todd, what do you think? A-, I think, sums it up nice, not flashy, not trashy, consistent depth moves that make a lot of sense for where this organization needs to be right now.
I'd have to go along with you about a solid A right now. I think there's still room for improvement. I don't think, like you said, they're done at all. I think there's going to be quite a few moves. If they're making moves like this, they're not going to make the 1 or 2 flashy and then that's it. Good night, good afternoon. I think they're just going to freaking go out there and make a lot of moves that are going to help this team, and you're going to raise your eyebrow and be like, hey, I really like that. Hey, that's not a bad move by Perry. That's not a bad move. He just seems to have, I think right now, a pulse on things. Like for me, when I kind of laughed at it about a year or 2 ago when he came out and says, I want players to that want to be a part of this organization and embrace the Angel way. We're trying to do a new culture here. I'm like, yeah. I've heard that from other GMs. But it seems like he's trying and it's working. It started, I think, with the draft of the pitching last year, certain player, or the year before last, and then last year's draft, they did pretty good. And they're getting guys that, when the draft classes, we've talked to them, me and Fernando, on interviews, and they love the draft class that they got together with. Like, the pitchers all get along with each other. They're getting that kind of culture that's going to work from the minor leagues up. And I think it's only positive moving forward right now. I'm really digging what Perry's doing. He takes a lot of crap because of, the previous regime or the ownership. But what he's had to work with, man, if you think about it, he's worked some miracles here. Maybe all the moves don't look great at first, but, most of them have panned out. He's had a few duds, but I think more than anything, they've worked out.
Yeah, I think he inherited a lot, to say the least, and he's having to maneuver around a lot, and a lot being Arte Moreno and hit the restrictions that come with that. And, sometimes it's almost like someone that just got stabbed and is bleeding. You're trying to clot the holes. We had to do that last year. Jonathan VR at third base when Rendon went down, and Phil Gosselin, and, Andrew Velasquez, and, things happen during a season where you kind of have to make those moves just to see, okay, maybe we can pull a miracle out of our pocket. Mm-hmm. He's had to do that for 2 years, and now we're officially, hopefully this is official, we're seeing him make moves that are going to better this organization, like from the minor leagues up. And I think we're starting to get that. So A minus. David, are you along the lines of the good rating of the 3 moves so far? And, I've been a very positive Perry Minasian fan. I don't see this being a negative thing against Perry Minasian, these 3 moves.
No, I think he's done really well. It's a really tough grade, because when I just sit and think about it, I'm like, yeah, it's nice, solid moves, create more depth in the organization. We need more. Even if, if in a perfect world you don't trade Renfroe, you sign a shortstop, and Renfroe is now all of a sudden another utility guy you can plug in off the bench. Depth is so unappreciated. Just look at the Dodgers, like the next man up mentality. The Angels, they lose someone and then that's it. There's the season. So it's nice to have some sort of real depth. They need more. So far, I'd probably give them a B plus or a B. And the only reason I'm down on it is it's great. They're good moves. They're definitely steps in the right direction, and they're going to help the team be competitive. I just don't know if it's enough to keep up with the rest of the division. Texas is going to get better. Seattle, I love what they're doing, or hate what they're doing, I guess, technically, since we don't want success from them.
You love to hate it.
Seattle's kind of figured it out with the blend of young talent and also free agency. Like, they're probably going to go nuts again this offseason. And then Houston arguably is like the best organization in baseball, and they're going to have a dynasty for like another decade. So it's nice that they're getting better, but the competition also at the same time. So it's, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself? And then also what we saw from like Phil Nevin, hurts my heart to say this, because I'm also a Cal State Fullerton Titan. I'm not really sold on him just yet. I wasn't really impressed with his tenure last year, or his time with the Angels last year. So it's if we're rating the offseason, it's probably like a B plus so far. I think they're all very smart moves. I think they're going to help the team a lot. But I don't see them moving the needle as much as the Angels really need to move the needle if we're serious about like playoff contention and all that. It's just, and the sad thing is the Angels were so low, it's going to take a lot just to get up to that point. But you have to consider competition when we're talking about vying for limited playoff spots at the end of the day. So, they sign a big shortstop or keep pounding it with depth. This really can't be it. I know Perry today said he feels like they're significantly better. I think significantly is not the right word. They're definitely better. You want to get significantly better, do 3 more moves like this. Go sign Trey Turner. Like, you really want to like be significant. Go be significant. These are solid, smart moves that they should have made last season. They're finally doing it now. It's competent. It's very, very competent what they're doing right now. But to really move the needle, you need either to double what you're doing now or go get that big fish to add to the nice offseason you've already put together.
I got to break in with that too. I agree because I mean, look, he's spitting fire right there. The only team that's going to suck is Oakland/Vegas. You know, and you got to look at what's going to happen. You know, the American League East isn't moving anywhere. Baltimore is likely going to improve. They've been a little quiet, but you know that the depth is there. Their youngsters are ready to play. Tampa Bay's there. Boston's going to be there again. New York's obviously
Toronto.
Toronto's Toronto. They're a beast of a team. They're going to be big players in free agency this year and in trades. So you have them in the AL West, and it's really the Central that's the weakling in the American League. So, yeah, we've got to the key is to get to the postseason. We got to do whatever it takes to get to the postseason, and maybe it's a balance of making these kind of moves and, like David said, making a splash, going all in, because Seattle's not taking a seat back. They're not playing conservative anymore. Texas is not going to bring in Bruce Bochy to suck. And they're going to eventually work on their pitching and make some moves this free agency. So, yeah, it's worrisome as an Angels fan because, again, I don't even talk about Houston because we all know they're going to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's Seattle and Texas that are making us putting more pressure on us.
We're shaking in our boots a little bit more, but it's a situation where, yes, Houston is going to be Houston, even with some key free agents potentially leaving. You know, Gurriel at first probably might not be there. Trey Mancini may not be there. They have a catching debacle out there. So even with those moves potentially going, Houston's still going to be Houston.
Or even Verlander leaving. They still got a really good rotation of guys who've come up, Javier and you know, just they keep spinning them out.
Valdez, yeah.
Yes.
They're machine.
Exactly. Yeah. Well-oiled machine. And in order for the Angels to become an even more well-oiled machine to get to that level of the Houston Astros, it's 100% true. The Angels need to continue making moves. This can't be it. Great with what they've done so far. I love what they're doing. Again, you know, we've ranged it from a B+ to an A. This is all good things. What else do the Angels need to do? Well, shortstop's a hole. They said at the beginning of the offseason, shortstop, outfield, pitching. Okay, they've addressed pitching in the starting rotation with Anderson. They've addressed the outfield in Hunter Renfroe. Shortstop still a question mark, and they said they probably wanted to add maybe one relief pitcher to the mix. Of course, where are we going to talk about right now? We've already touched upon it a little bit, the shortstop market. I was listening to this on MLB Network. I believe it was yesterday morning or the day before. Which free agent class should the Angels have dove in and got a shortstop for? Was it last year's class that had Javi Baez, Trevor Story, Carlos Correa, Corey Seager, Marcus Semien? Or is it this free agent class that is headlined by Dansby Swanson, Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, and who's the other one I'm missing? I'm blanking for the moment. The big shortstop. Oh boy. I don't know. Blanking on the name for a minute. But again, the shortstop market that we have right now. Which one should the Angels have gone into if they're at the end of the day going to get a shortstop? And in the grand scheme of things, we're in present day 2022 now. So everything in the past is to the wayside. But will the Angels go out and actually do what they say and pull the trigger and get the big shortstop? It's going to be a question that's going to take a lot of thinking in regards, because again, big contracts with Trout. You got to think about what you're going to do with Shohei Ohtani. Anthony Rendon, who David has said on numerous occasions might be the worst Angels contract in recent years in comparison to Hamilton, Pujols, and so on and so forth, bad free agent signings that they've done. Some money is tied up, but some money's getting freed up. Todd, what do you think this shortstop market between last year and this year, and how can the Angels do right by it right now?
I think it's crazy. If they would have went last year, I think they would obviously paid more money. It's a little scary even this year. I think this year is the one they should be in on. If they're going to get a Trey Turner or Dansby Swanson, a Carlos Correa, it would be this year. You know, you got to shoot your shot now. However, I think even if tomorrow they came out and said, hey, we've acquired Trey Turner or we've gotten Dansby Swanson, because those other guys got like 200 plus up, you know, last year. Maybe you get one for less than that. Maybe you could work a deal. But even if you do, anything over 100 million that you sign right now, the first thought, including mine, is going to be like, okay, how does that affect Shohei's future? Like that's, I think, on everyone's mind right now is we've got to find a way to sign Shohei and show him that we want him here long term and we could win. We got to negotiate before spring training if that's a possibility. How does it affect? I think that was the number one question going into it. So to answer your question, definitely this year would have been the year, because obviously if you commit what all these other teams like Marcus Semien to Texas, I think, what was it, 600 or 700 million that they invested on their infield last year. That's not a possibility. And those guys were like big strikeout guys, not what we wanted. Trevor Story had a very slow start. Correa had a slow start. So those guys got the big money contracts, really didn't take flight till the end of the season. So I think this class is much better as far as contact hitters, shortstops. But again, will it affect that Ohtani bottom line?
Ohtani is getting $30 million to play for the Angels in 2023. He signed the 1-year arbitration deal.
Mhm.
Congratulations, Shohei. Is he worth the money? Yes, of course he is. Should he have been AL MVP? Yes, that's a conversation that we've had before, conversation for another day. But how does Renfroe, Anderson, and Urshela, what did we all talk about? How does that help or hurt Shohei Ohtani's chances of being an Angel in the future? David and I have talked about this a million times. Last year, David was extremely high on picking up Carlos Correa in free agency. I was like, I don't know. I don't think the Angels are going to pay that much. And then for some reason, I've had an epiphany, and I feel this year might be a good year for Carlos Correa, minus the whole Astros cheating scandal personal matters. On the field, Carlos Correa, I like an idea of what he did with Minnesota, a 3-year deal, but it has opt-outs after each year that has high AAVs. I think the Angels could maybe financially swing that in a sense, maybe do a 4 or 5-year deal, an opt-out after 2 years, because that says, hey, we want you here for a few years. If you help us win in the short term, that could be a huge asset to the Angels. It's tantalizing to Trout and Ohtani, now Renfroe, and potentially Walsh to balance out that order a little deeper. David, it's been about 365 days. How do you feel about Carlos Correa from last year to this year, and could he be a legit fit for the Angels this year in this shortstop market?
Yeah, same as I did last year. Correa's only 28. And now it's an interesting conversation because Arte can write a check that he doesn't have to pay, right? So if he really wants to, he can do the high AAV and to say screw it, good luck to the next owner. But it's an interesting draft class, and that I think last year's may have been deeper. Obviously, almost all of them had like really bad starts, and so all those contracts you can pretty much say they overpaid, except for maybe the Twins. But this draft class, or not draft class, but this free agency class is interesting in that you have guys like Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts, who are professional hitters. They have that consistency in their swing. They're gonna get on base. They're as close to sure things as you can possibly get in free agency right now. But they're going to command huge contracts, right? So if that scares off like Arte, then I think Correa makes a little bit more sense. He may want that shorter deal with the high AAV and the opt-outs. So financially speaking, Correa may be that good fit. The problem is he's a Boras client, and Arte has his reservations about working with Scott Boras. So that could end up playing a factor if they are indeed looking at a top shortstop. But if I had my pick, they're caution to win, no money at all. I think Trey Turner, in my opinion, may be the top hitter in baseball just by fundamentals. The dude's gonna get on base every game. It seems like he's gonna provide so much help to that top of that lineup. He would give Trout and Ohtani so many more RBI opportunities. He would be the perfect fit, in my opinion. I don't think it's very realistic, but I think Correa, like you mentioned, he's the interesting one in all this, just because of the precedent now that he set with Minnesota. If he would take a somewhat similar deal, because I don't think his value, despite the slow start, has really gone down in terms of what he's going to command in the free agency market. I think he's still going to get a really nice deal, and being only 28 is going to help that. But yeah, I would still take him in a heartbeat if that was on the table.
I still never thought to this day I'd ever be saying, yeah, Carlos Correa, come on down to Anaheim. We want you in Angels red. After everything that happened in 2017 and, you know, personal issues, and, you know, he always has torched the Angels,
Right.
regardless if they're playing at Minute Maid Park in Houston or at Angel Stadium. Who would have thought we'd be having this conversation right now
Well,
about
it's like what
Correa?
I always tell you. I'm like, how they handled it was completely stupid. They said a lot of dumb things. But the dumbest thing about all this is that all those guys were so talented they never needed to cheat. And Correa is one of those guys. I'm like, why do you have to cheat when you have as much talent as Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Carlos Correa? Like, that's insane to me. So I never questioned his talent. I think he's probably grown up a lot in the last couple of years. I hope he continues to grow up. I know he's had still on the field issues in the past, especially when the Dodgers came to town. But he would be a significant upgrade. I still haven't seen enough of from him to indicate that he would be a clubhouse problem or any sort of behavioral issues. I think the checkered past, the further his career goes, that'll kind of be blurred a little bit. Never fully erased. He'll be booed at every stadium, and if he ever became an Angel, I think he would still get a little bit of mixed reactions, mostly cheers, but there'd be some jeers out of that. But I think the talent's too much to overlook. If he really wants a short-term deal, that's even better for the Angels. And like I said, there really hasn't been enough indication that he would be a problem in any kind of clubhouse. So I'm on board with signing him if the opportunity arose.
Yeah, and I know Todd loves the Dodgers so much. You know, we've been hearing already that the Dodgers are potentially in need of a shortstop, and all of a sudden they're trying to open their arms to the idea of Carlos Correa. On a scale of 1 to 1,000,000, how much would Dodger fans hate us even more if we received Carlos Correa and the Angels actually signed him in free agency?
Dude, I think we would jump up not close to the Giants, but we're within striking distance. As far as a hated rival, because I mean, look, I've said it before. I think the Dodgers are like the Laker fans. Dodger fans want superstars. That's why they wanted so much for Puig to be successful, to be their Mike Trout. And throughout this success, they put together great teams, no doubt, to make the playoffs and win the division. But they haven't had true superstars, and they were hoping Cody Bellinger would be that long-term player. Not that it happened. They thinking Mookie Betts is that guy. He shows flashes, but then he disappears. They're kind of jealous that we got the Trout and the Ohtani. So if we put together a winning club, plus have Trout, Ohtani, add in Correa, we put together an all-star lineup, boy, you better believe they're going to hate us. And even if we get a Trey Turner, because look, like David said, he just gets on base, dude. He's a salivating player for GMs to want to get, because even against the shift, he hits against it, he hits with it. Imagine the shift gone, his numbers are going to go up. He walks, he takes extra bases. Correa is the same way. He's an awesome player, good leader. I didn't agree with what they did in Houston, their attitude, but you got to remember the league let it happen, and then Boston, they cheated too, and no one seems to boo them. They seem to just get a pass. Houston just played up the bad boy role. And if they like being the NWO of the freaking Major League Baseball, then fine, so be it. Boston can do whatever the hell they want to and still be cheered. So I've never quite gotten that. But to go back to your question, man, if Carlos Correa came to this team and was sandwiched in between Ohtani and Trout, Renfroe, Walsh and Rendon, boy, that would piss off Dodger fans, man. Because they already try to boo the nicest guy in the world in Ohtani, and they already try to boo Mike Trout, the best player. Imagine Correa on that lineup as well.
Oof. But again, who would have thought we would have been talking about potentially Correa in an Angels uniform even after the cheating scandal, thinking, oh, Correa is probably going to be an Astro for life.
Absolutely.
It's a very wild concept. Again, that's the business of baseball, especially when you're a Scott Boras client. Before I get to the final idea here that I want to pitch to you guys here on this episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast, you did mention something interesting that I just popped up on Twitter. about the shift. Remember, new rules in 2023, no shifts, bigger bases at first, there's a pitch clock, and a limited number of times you can pick off toss to any base. Hunter Renfroe, Angels' new outfielder, was shifted against, out of 522 plate appearances in 2022, the defense shifted against him 490 times. So does he have a better year offensively? I know I don't have the numbers in front of me on Jared Walsh, but I know he was shifted against a lot. Ohtani shifted against a lot. And Gio Urshela, again, I don't have the number in front of me. He was shifted a lot when he was with Minnesota as a pull right-handed hitter to the left side.
Trout too.
And Trout.
Yep.
So that shift is going to change a lot of things. And clearly, I think with Hunter Renfroe, I wonder if that was a sticking point of maybe why Perry Minasian was drawn to him in this trade market. Because did any of us think, again, we're still in the year 2022, so the bingo card is alive and well, that Renfroe would be a trade target? No.
I never had him circled on my bingo card, no.
Yeah, so the bingo card is alive and well here in 2022. I just saw that pop up. I thought that was a very interesting point with the new rule changes. Shifts are going to be a very big topic of discussion with a lot of offensive players, kind of along the lines of the Joey Gallos of the world, that you see the extreme shift against that might have some progression and get back to their high offensive game in 2023. So that was just something I wanted to pull out of the hat right there and kind of add to the mix of maybe that's why Hunter Renfroe is more revered now in Perry Minasian's mind than maybe Mitch Haniger was. Who knows? We could still get Mitch Haniger, but you never know what can happen.
I was just thinking with Haniger, it's just more like, depth wise, he's injury prone. We don't want to add another injury-prone type dude. I mean, he has high potential, but, can he stay healthy type? I think we're tired of those kind of question marks. Hunter Renfroe's been very healthy for most of his career. And then another thing I want to add to that shift thing, it's gonna bring the what is it called? The focus now on maybe more fly ball pitchers getting jobs rather than ground ball pitchers, because when you got that shift, you want that ground ball pitcher all the time. Everyone, the talk the last 2 years was, man, he's got a good sinker. We're going to bring a sinker pitcher in here to try to invoke the double play because they're playing the shift. And usually it would work. I think you're going to see a lot of ERAs jump up a bit this year. And, because guys are going to be able to find the holes a lot better than they were be able to before. And then again, if you got a fly ball pitcher, that's going to be a coveted, roster spot on your team if you can get one.
Absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see how all of this works out for the Angels. Again, Hunter Renfroe, the Angels just trade for tonight in exchange for Jansen Junk, Elvis Peguero, and minor league pitcher Adam Cementeris. They also pulled off a trade for Gio Urshela just a couple of days ago, and then they signed Tyler Anderson, lefty starter, 3 years, $39 million earlier last week. 3 big moves. Very good stuff from Perry Minasian. Before I let both of you guys go and we conclude this episode of the Katella Chronicles podcast, we got to think forward thinking a little bit. What are the Angels going to do next? We've talked about the shortstop market. We talked about the depth in the outfield. Minasian at the beginning of the offseason said outfield, shortstop, starting pitching, relief pitching. So, David, I'm going to go to you first as my co-host here. What do you think? What player, free agent or trade, I know trade is a little harder to predict, but who is the next player that is going to be signing a deal with the Angels? It could be a shortstop, could be an outfielder, could be a pitcher.
Ooh.
Where do the Angels pivot?
Oh, it's tough because it seems like they're really looking at the trade market right now. I would like to be Carlos Correa, but I'll be realistic for a second. Oh man,
We have to be realistic, maybe.
It's tough because this is the one of those off seasons I've been shocked by every single move. First, you're signing a pitcher to a multi-year contract, which the Angels never do, at least with the starting pitchers. And then they go out and they trade for infield piece that actually plays the major league level, which they also never do. And then they go and get an outfielder who none of us had on our radar. So it's really tough to predict what they'll do next. I'll say they give a 2-year deal to Craig Kimbrell and shore up the bullpen. Let's go there.
All right, Craig Kimbrell
His
staying in
value is
California.
his value's lower now after a really rough season with the Dodgers. So that's a contract. If you want to go to the fix him up route again, there you go. Go Craig
I just
Kimbrell.
talked about not having any more projects, and you're giving me a project to talk about.
I have literally Perry's keeping me on my toes this offseason. He's operating in the limitations I thought he would, especially with a lot of these short-term moves. Even Tyler Anderson, it's not a terribly long commitment. And then you got Renfroe and Urshela are both free agents next season. So he's operating how I thought he would with trying to combine, put a roster together that's competitive, but also can be changed completely next year. So I still don't know what he's going to do next, though. So I'll go on a limb and just say Craig Kimbrell for 2 years at the back of the bullpen.
All right, Craig Kimbrell. Todd, I'll turn it to you. Quick answer on that one. Would you take a flyer on Craig Kimbrell? Simple yes or no. And then who do you think the Angels will go after next?
No, because I'm tired of the people behind the catcher mimicking his arm motion. No, I wouldn't want him. I'd have to disagree. I actually want to go with another southpaw. I want Josh Hader. I really think he would fit really good with this club. California guy. He's got that mentality. He looked like Syndergaard. I think he would work really good with his bullpen. I think he'd throw fire and ice out there with having our boy what's his name, Herget, set up in the 8th inning. I liked him setting up down the stretch and then throwing Hader. So throwing the nasty junk around 80s and then go with a 90s 100-mile-per-hour pitch to close it out.
For the record, I agree. I would rather take a flyer on Hader. I think he's going to be a little more expensive, and I really don't want Kimbrell. I think from what we've seen in the last couple of seasons, his arm looks shot. Mm-hmm. But it's just where I feel like the Angels could afford if they're really trying to get some sort of veteran leadership, I guess, veteran presence. Yeah. But I would much rather have Hader as well, even with his rocky end to the season last year.
Yeah, I think that was a change of scenery type thing. But if you could get the Hader of the Milwaukee Brewers and just that dominant force out of the bullpen, that would be yes, I would take a flyer on that one for sure. That's unanimous yes on that account. The Hader conversation, I think that would be a kind of like a Rice-Sell deal, maybe in the case of AAV, like around 14 to 16 million, maybe even more than that for Hader. I'm not sure. I don't know if he's a Scott Boras client or not, thinking money purposes, but Hader would be a fantastic guy to add to this Angels bullpen because as of right now, the back end of the Angels bullpen is Aaron Loup, Ryan Tepera, and Jimmy Herget. If the Angels do not add any more bullpen pieces, I could see them either going to Herget or Tepera as the closer. Tepera's had more experience in that role, but I think I might like Tepera more in a setup role, 7th inning, 8th inning, rotate between he and Herget. Mm-hmm. I'm along the lines of you guys thinking bullpen is where the Angels go next, and I'm going to play the safest card in the bunch.
Oh,
I actually like a lefty, and yes, like I said, unanimous yes on Josh Hader. Absolutely, I would take him in a heartbeat. But I'm going to go with another lefty. He's got great hair and a great mustache game. Give me a little Andrew Chafin. I said this last year.
Like that.
I said this on numerous accounts to David last year. I was very high on two guys last offseason, Andrew Chafin and Michael Lorenz. One of the two I got A+ on. I was correct. So a little pat on the back right there. But Andrew Chafin had a phenomenal year with the crummy Oakland A's, was it Oakland? Yeah, it was Oakland. He had a phenomenal year there. He had a phenomenal year the year before with the crummy Detroit Tigers. So he's been on a couple crummy teams back to back. Mm-hmm. I think he may, he's a little bit older. So I don't know if he's thriving for a deep playoff run or if he's just happy with wherever he's at. He seems like a cool cat. I think he would fit into this Angel organization very well. He's been a closer in the past. I could see him maybe fitting in that role. The Angels could play closer by committee. I wouldn't suggest the closer by committee role, but in a way you do. If you get Chafin, you would have 4 potential closers. Loop's done it before with the Mets. Tepera's done it with the White Sox. Chafin's done it with the Cubs. And Jimmy Herget did it this year with the Angels. So it would be an interesting scenario for Matt Wise and Phil Nevin to utilize in this bullpen kind of scenario. post-Raisel Iglesias era. But I like Andrew Chafin. I think he'd be a nice fit for this organization. If the Angels don't go closer route, I like Chafin as somewhere in this Angels bullpen.
Maybe your Lorenzen picks the next move, like 2 for 10
True.
Yeah, I'll
to
put it
fill out
on
that 6th
record.
spot.
To fill out the 6th spot, I do feel the Angels need a right-handed starter. And if it doesn't come on the trade market, I think it would be great if it was Michael Lorenzen, homegrown kid, Cal State Fullerton. There is no bias from David and I on the Cal State Fullerton. I promise. Don't look. But 2 years, $10 million, I think is very fair, very team-friendly deal. From the conversations we've all had internally and that I've had with his mom, Cheryl Lorenzen, he wants to be in California. He wants to be close to home. He doesn't really want to go anywhere else. He's a brand new daddy now. He just had a kid just a couple of weeks ago. So congratulations to Michael and the Lorenzen family. I would love to see Michael Lorenzen as well. That was my kind of 1A and 1B pick. I didn't want to be too obvious, but Lorenzen could get a deal as well. I wouldn't say no to Lorenzen. Todd, would you say no to Lorenzen?
No, because you saw his dedication here. You saw when he did, talk about the Angels, his mom's attitude when we talked to him or talked to her. And then the fact that what impressed me is he could have shut it down last year. There was no need for him to come back at all. He should have probably shut it down. I think 9 out of 10 people would have told him to shut it down. But he came out there and he pitched hard. And he wanted to show that he has a lot left in the tank and that he wants to play here. So that impressed me. And yeah, the 6th spot being open, you don't want to rush Kai Bush, Sil Seth, and other guys out there too fast. Give him a little bit more time to mature down there in the minors, 1 more year, a half season, whatever. I don't think it's a bad move to give him, a contract-friendly deal to stay here, and it's convenient for him and his family, and it works for the team. I think it's an all-around win.
Yeah. David
Sounds like the move, right?
Yeah. But David said this correctly, and I think it's an overarching theme. There is no pattern with the Angels right now. Everything we expected them to do is not happening. Except, David, you kind of get some brownie points on this one. You said a lot of 1-year small deals under the constraints. And in a way, we're kind of getting that a little bit with Renfroe's contract.
They're good moves.
Yes.
Exactly. That's the difference.
They're
not taking waivers. They're actually getting MLB ready guys.
Correct.
True.
They're actually making quality moves that are going to help this organization move forward in 2023. So, Wild, who thought on the next podcast episode this is what we were going to be talking about, actually good Angel moves. And it's been great to have Toddfox from Halos in the Infield on to discuss all these moves. Renfroe, Urshela, Anderson, free agent predictions. We are in the offseason now as we prepare for the 2023 Major League Baseball season. We got a couple months before spring training. Opening day is just 4.5, 5 months away. Baseball is here. Winter meetings are going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, so you're going to probably see a lot of big-name free agents come off the board in San Diego in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. So it's an exciting time, not only to be an Angels fan, but to be baseball fans in general.
One thing I'll say real quick, because since you brought up Scott Boras, I forgot to say this too. Scott Boras was quoted the other day as saying, and he referenced, in passing the what's it called, our boy, our owner, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Our owner. Anyway,
Arte Moreno.
Arte Moreno. Yeah. He said basically, when the Angels change ownership, it's going to be a lot easier. He's telling his clients, you want to go to a team that gets brand new ownership nowadays because the amount of money they're spending for a set organization, they're not going to be like, oh, we're going to be on the cheap. They're going to want to spend. So he will likely direct his clients to the Angels, unlike what he's done in the past here with Moreno.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked that that's the case between those two men, Boras and Arte Moreno. I wouldn't be shocked with any. Am I shocked with anything Scott Boras does these days? No. Come on. He's been so coy in everything that he's done so far this offseason because, of course, who's the biggest free agent out there this year? Aaron Judge.
Mm-hmm.
He was in San Francisco today. There's rumblings of that happening. It's going to be a very, very volatile thing, in my opinion, with Boras clients, if and when Arte ever sells this organization. Here's my nightmare. I'm going to put this out there right now. Hopefully I'm not jinxing anything. Somehow Perry Minasian finds the perfect remedy and signs these guys. The Angels are postseason bound, and they make a run at the World Series. I'm not saying they're going to win, but they make a good, at least second round ALCS type moves. Arte Moreno says, well, gosh dang it. I did pretty good this year. I'm not selling the team anymore. I got this. That is my nightmare upon nightmares.
Don't
David,
you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. Don't you put that evil on me.
don't put the evil. Oh, yeah. But again, it's a nightmare that, as us Angel fans, should we prepare for the worst case scenario?
Well, I don't even want to think about that. I
I
think
don't want to think about it. I just want to sit and enjoy.
Yeah,
I think yeah, he's probably too tied up in like litigation right now and his financial issues. He could probably use a quick $2 billion, you know?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
city is really trying to get him for $300 million. You know, they're putting a case together for you know, if he holds on to the team, the new ownership might inherit that. So that's another reason why he wants to sell.
Yeah, he's gonna have, at the very least, he's gonna have to settle, and then he's also dealing with the lawsuit from the Skaggs family. So he's gonna have to write checks off the baseball field. So yeah, I think his incentive is more than I haven't been able to put a winning product on the field since 2014. I think there's a lot going behind the scenes that are driving him to want to run out of town as fast as he can with as much as he can.
Yeah, because like I'd love to be in his position and be an owner of a major league franchise, but to have all the storm clouds he's got surrounding this stadium, paying me $2 billion after I only paid about $200 million for the squad, I'd walk away a happy man. I'd walk away like I won a World Series or two.
Yeah.
In my own mind, I'd be like, yeah, I'm a winner.
As the great Steve Miller Band once said, "Oh, take the money and run."
Exactly.
That's the best thing. Take the money and run. But on that note,
if Artie was a baseball player, even in a Sunday league, that should be his theme song, his walk up.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. That is the theme. Todd said it perfectly. That is the theme of Arte Moreno's. That would, whenever the day comes and Arte officially sells his team, that will be the entrance music to our Instagram Live podcast, whatever it is. That is the music that we are just going to roll on by here on the podcast. But that will conclude things here on episode number 11 of the Katella Chronicles podcast with special guest Toddfox from Halos in the Infield. Todd, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure not only having you on the show or Fernando or Crazy Randy at some points, but it's great that Katella Chronicles has a terrific partner in you guys in Halos in the Infield.
Hey, we feel the same, and thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Of course. David, any final thoughts? Well, first, of course, as always, thank you for coming on and being a terrific co-host as well.
I want to see more of these Twitter bombs, these passive bombs regarding the Angels. So let's keep the ball rolling, keep the good mojo going.
Keep the good mojo going. As mentioned, we're just about a week and a half away from Major League Baseball's winter meetings that are being held in San Diego this year, the site of probably many free agent moves that will going to be happening. Could they be for the Angels? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But you're going to want to stick around on Katella Chronicles as well as Halos in the Infield's social media channels, Instagram and Twitter for all updated news and information. But for Dominick Lorenz, David Goodkind, and Toddfox from Halos in the Infield, we say thank you for tuning in and listening to episode number 11 of the Katella Chronicles podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. And of course, you can find us at Katella_CHRON on Twitter and Instagram. And you can check us out on our website, katellachronicles.wordpress.com. And we are the heartbeat of pro sports in Anaheim. Good night, everybody.